Welcome to the Books of Titans podcast, where I seek truth in the world's best books. I'm your host, Eric Rostad, coming to you from the beautiful Books of Titans studio in Franklin, Tennessee. My goal is to read 52 books per year and share what I'm learning. I'll talk a bit about each book, tie ideas together from a variety of genres, and share the one thing I always hope to remember from each book. Today I'm going to cover The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This is book 25 of 52 from my 2020 reading list. This book is the prequel to the Hunger Games series of young adult dystopian novels. There were three of those books. The first was The Hunger Games that came out in 2008. And then in 2009, Catching Fire, the second book, and the third book, Mockingjay, came out in 2010. These novels were also developed into films and were spread across 4 films, with Mockingjay, the final book, being broken up into 2 parts. Despite them being young adult novels, the themes are quite adult, so I'll get into some of those in the second segment of this episode. This book, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, it starts 64 years before the time of the first Hunger Games book and follows Coriolanus Snow, who is the evil president of Panem. Panem is the nation in North America, and it consists of a capital and then 12 districts, actually 13 districts, but 13's been wiped out. So there's 12 districts, and then the capital is the wealthy area, and the districts are, they're in varying levels of poverty, and there's a lot of hunger, hence Hunger Games. We know in the past there's been a rebellion where the districts fought against the capital won, and as a way to remind the districts that the capital has the ultimate power, and to provide visual entertainment for people who live in the capital, there's this yearly thing called the Hunger Games. And as a punishment, they take 2 children from each of these districts. So 12 districts, 2 children, a boy and a girl. There's 24 total children, and they're put into an arena to fight to the death. And that is the reminder of, you guys rebelled against us in the past, and this is the reminder to not do that again. We're going to take your children, we're going to make them fight to the death, and it's going to be entertainment for us. Now, Suzanne Collins is the author, and the story of how she came up with the idea for this series of books is that she was flipping through channels, and this was early 2000s, and she sees the Iraq War going on, and then she flips to another channel, and there's this reality television show going on, and then she flips to another channel, and there's people competing for a prize. She thought, what if these things were combined into one thing? And that's how she got the premise for this book. So this particular one, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, is broken up into 3 parts. I really enjoyed the first 2, very action-packed. The third was a bit slow at times and kind of got a little young adulty, lovey-dovey, a little too much for my taste. But yeah, the first 2 are very action-packed. The third one, some action in there as well, but it dragged a little bit more so than the first 2. So who's this book for? Well, it's a good book if you just need an escape, but it also challenges how you view things and how you think about things. And so it's a interesting novel in that sense, a fun novel despite the content, but really kind of helps you or causes you to think of things in perhaps in a new way. And so it is a young adult book. That's the genre, but I think adults can read this one as well and get a lot out of it. It took me 12 hours to read it. That was over 14 days. I moved during that time, so there are a few days where I was not reading at all. So it probably wouldn't have taken that long, but in terms of the number of days, but 12 hours total. So this episode will consist of a couple more segments. The next segment, I'll cover some themes and ideas that show up in this book, and then in segment 3, I'll cover my one key takeaway and the one thing I always hope to remember from this book. And then at the end of segment 3, I have a little surprise for you as well. So I encourage you to stick with it to the end and listen for that surprise. If this is your first time listening to the Books of Titans podcast, welcome. I'm glad you're listening. I do not do advertisements. I don't like them myself when I'm listening to podcasts, so I avoid them. But I've just moved into a new house, and the room is such that it is smaller than where I just moved from, and I've had to sell my bookshelves because they just don't fit for this room. And so I'm looking at having to do some custom shelving. And this custom shelving will also incorporate a desk and an area where I will do these podcasts going forward. I'm attempting to raise some money to do this. And if you've ever wondered how you can support the podcast, well, here's your chance, because I need help building these shelves and paying for these shelves. So you can go to booksatitans.com/support, and you'll be able to give any amount. At that link, I will keep everyone updated on the status of how much I've raised and how much I have left to go. And so if you've gotten any value out of these episodes, you can now return that value and help create a magical Books of Titans library and studio. Now on to segment 2 and some ideas and themes from this book and then the Hunger Games in general. I remember about 5 or 6 years ago, I was at a music practice at church, and we got onto the topic of the Hunger Games. And one of the guitarists, he said, I just couldn't get into it because it just seems so far from reality. I mean, can you really imagine people dressing like that? And he was referring to the Capitol, where the Capitol, they would show their wealth through their outfits, and they would have these extravagant parties. And he's just saying, I just couldn't get into it because that just seems so outrageous. And I'm not all that quick on my feet, but right afterwards I was thinking, have you not seen what they were wearing in pre-revolutionary France? Marie Antoinette, have you seen those outfits? Those were just as crazy. And so these parties in the Hunger Games, they would just eat to excess, and then they would drink this wine that would allow them to throw up so that they could go and eat more. And you're thinking that's crazy. But then you realize that the Romans did that. They had vomitoriums, where it was a room that was set up. You'd go and eat, and then you'd go into this vomitorium, you'd vomit, and then go back to the party and eat more. So it's not all that crazy. I mean, it's happened in history. Or take death as entertainment. Again, back to Roman times, the Colosseum. I mean, people pack out these Colosseums to watch people fight to the death, or fight animals, or even executions. You know, it was death as entertainment. The point here is that at first these things seem very shocking in these books. I mean, if you've ever told somebody that you're reading The Hunger Games and you tell them the premise of the book, they kind of look at you like, why are you reading that? Are you being entertained by this, by this death? Kids fighting kids to the death? But when you take a step back and you look at history, these things don't seem like such outliers. In fact, it's actually really, really interesting to consider these topics and consider these things in a modern context. And that's what this book does, because this takes place in the future from our time, and it takes place in a North America, and it doesn't necessarily look like our North America because there's a capital, and then there's 12 districts coming out of this capital, but it's enough of a similarity, and there are things that we see glimpses of that really help you see, you know, this could be the next step. And so let's, take the television and entertainment aspect. You just kind of imagine these Roman gladiatorial fights, but imagine them televised. Or there's these jabberjays, and these jabberjays are birds that have been genetically modified to gather intelligence. So they're flying around, and they can kind of get close to some people who are having a conversation and then record everything they say. But that's not a whole lot different than the technology that we have now. I mean, our phones and watches and earbuds all have microphones in them, and the drones keep getting smaller and smaller to where they can eavesdrop. So these jabberjay, the genetically modified birds, that may seem a little crazy, but it's not that far from reality right now. And so I really enjoy that aspect of this book and just in general the Hunger Games series, where you are confronted with these things, and you realize that it's not that much of a stretch for us to get there. You have other things of rich versus poor, elite versus district people, war, retribution, reality television. One writer, Peter Bloom, said, although it's aimed at young adults, it presents potentially quite subversive ideas of mass revolution, economic sabotage, and the populist fight against oligarchy. So the question in the book that's brought up is this. Is this the natural state of humanity? Is this the natural state of humankind? If civilization disappears, is this how we all start behaving? Do we just act like these people, these kids having to fight each other in the arena? I mean, do we just start battling it out? And what do you think? It's an interesting question to ponder and to consider. What if, as Russ Roberts, the host of Econ Talk earlier this year, he tweeted out, the veil of civilization is thin. What if these things that we relied on, what if they went away? What would people revert to? What if there wasn't protection? What if the grocery stores were not there? You had to go get food on your own. Like, what would happen? And it's a good question to consider. And Suzanne Collins takes it even deeper, and she takes it to the individual level. And so what this book is following Coriolanus Snow. And we know him in the Hunger Games series as being the evil president of Panem. But we don't really know how he got there. I mean, he's a special kind of evil. He's a special kind of villain in the other books. But was he just born that way? How did he become that way? And that's what this book gets into. What led him to that point? Is his evil, is that the natural state of individuals and humankind? Or how did he get there? And so it's a good question to ask, and especially a big one to consider, since it's intended for a young adult audience. Now into segment 3, and the one idea I always hope to remember from this book. And it's a little strange with novels. I mean, with nonfiction, it's a little easier to pick something and say, that's the one thing I know I can implement in my life, or that's a good idea, and I want to try to start doing that. But with novels, it's usually more the thing that I'm still thinking about. And the thing I'm still thinking about after having finished the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is just this path that Snow takes during the book. And we know him as President Snow later on. We know him as the evil leader. But how did he get there? And what were the decisions he made that led to that? And this book is an exploration of that to some degree. And you see him just start making small little decisions that seem inconsequential at the time, but start leading him down this path. And this is an idea that has come up in so many books for the Books of Titans project. It's the idea of going one way or the other, but with daily decisions and how you approach each decision in your life. You're going one direction or another. And when you make decisions to go the wrong way, it just makes it going that way easier in the future. So Coriolanus kills somebody in the dark out of self-preservation in this book. It's either kill or be killed at that point. But that makes killing somebody who he thinks might be a problem in the future much easier later on in the book. So this one killing makes the next one easier, makes the next one easier, makes the next one easier. And it was interesting to look at this character throughout the book and to see that path. And it made me think of a few other books from this year's reading list. And the first one is Crime and Punishment. The protagonist in that one, Raskolnikov, he admires Napoleon, and he thinks at some point in Napoleon's life, he must have gotten away with something. He must have done something when he was young, and maybe it was just one thing, but he got away with it, and he knew he could take it another step, and he just kept getting away with things to the point where he's leading a nation and doing things that the average citizen would be executed for doing, but he's able to do them because he's the leader. Everyone's respecting him at this point, but Raskolnikov keeps asking, and he thinks he can be like Napoleon because he figures Napoleon must have had that one thing, and then he just kept going from there. Or even the Romanovs, the book I just finished yesterday. There's a part in there about Lenin's brother, and Lenin's brother was a bomb-throwing, actually a bomb-making terrorist, and he was executed by the Tsar for being a terrorist. But that execution had a major impact on Lenin, and I've not read about Lenin, but that was a major turning point in his life, and so you wonder what were the things that led to Lenin becoming Lenin, and that being a big part of it. So what were the decisions he made after that? And I'm not saying that we need to feel sorry for Lenin here. Poor guy, his bomb-making terrorist brother was executed, but dig a little deeper here. What are these decisions, and what are your decisions? What are your decisions on a daily basis that are leading you one way or another? Now, you may be wondering why a grown man is reading a young adult fiction. I was not really into the Hunger Games at all, but then I had the chance to be in one of the films. So I play the violin, and in the final Mockingjay movie, they needed a violinist for the wedding scene. Much of the filming was completed in Atlanta, and my home at the time was just about a mile away from the Civic Center where that scene was filmed. So I got hired to do that part in the film, and it was an amazing experience. I mean, it was one of the coolest things I've ever done. I got to be there for 2 days of filming. One day was just kind of observing everything, and then the second day, towards the end of the day, was when they did the filming for the violin part. So I knew going in that there would be one song, and I was sent that song in advance so that I could learn it, so that when I'm playing the violin for the film, even though the track was recorded by someone else, it would actually look like I was playing it, and not like every other movie where they're not playing anything similar to what you're hearing at all. So I wanted it to be true to what was actually being played, so I made sure to learn that song and was sent that one in advance. But when I got there, they said, well, here's another song as well, and we're not sure if this one's going to be in it yet, but this is a second song that may be used in this wedding scene. So I just kind of kept listening to it over and over and wrote down the notes for the song, and it ended up not being used in the film, but I learned it. I've actually even played it for a few other weddings. It's a beautiful piece, and so I wanted to share it with you guys. So I'm going to play it here, and you guys are probably the first to perhaps hear this version that never made it to the film, but almost could have been part of the wedding scene. So hope you enjoy. Here it goes. To recap, these Hunger Games books are a lot of fun. mean, it's disturbing content in the sense of kids fighting kids and to the death, that sort of thing. But I really enjoy the mixture of past and present. The character names are fantastic. I mean, in general, when you're reading fiction, just pay attention to the names because the author is using them for a reason, and they might harken back to someone else, maybe a famous character from the Bible or somebody famous from history. And in this book is the names are rich in that sense. Coriolanus is a legendary Roman leader, and it's also a tragedy by Shakespeare. And so I've never read the tragedy. I'd be curious to read the tragedy, see if there's any connection points, or even in that Roman leader's life, if there are any connection points from the book. Maybe there are, maybe they aren't. Maybe she just picked the name because of its historical context, but maybe there's something deeper there, and it's something always that's fun to explore when reading. Now, instead of the usual outro music, I'll end with me playing the song that is from that wedding scene in The Hunger Games. So I hope you enjoy. But before I do that, that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you for listening. I'd love to hear from you. You can email me at eric@booksoftitans.com. Let me know what you thought of this book, if you've read it, or the Hunger Games series in general, or just in general. I love hearing from people about the books they're reading, and I love talking to people about books that I've read. That was one of the reasons I started this project is to be able to talk to different people about the books that I'm reading. So you can also write me a letter. My address is on the Books of Titans website. Just go to booksoftitans.com/contact. And my address is there where you can write me a handwritten letter. And some people do that, and I really appreciate that. You can follow Books of Titans on Instagram or Twitter. Also, the website is stock full of resources to help you find the best books and create your own reading list. I'll be back next week. I'm going to go back to doing weekly podcasts instead of every other week. So I just finished the Romanovs yesterday, and I was blown away. So that's going to be the topic of the next episode. Can't wait to talk about that one. So until then, keep reading, keep learning, and keep listening. I'm out.